You're watching the ETSI Virtual Event on boosting the impact of research and innovation through standardization. It's time now for our panel discussion on the research, innovation and standards ecosystem in ETSI, where we welcome back today's speakers and presenters. And if you want to ask any of our panelists a question, then please do so now. Use the form here on the website to submit your question. Now, as we continue to develop 5G, we are also looking ahead at what comes next. And whilst there is undoubtedly an opportunity for Europe, there's also a risk of being left behind. So how do we move forward? What role will ETSI play? And what is needed for Europe to take a leading position on research and innovation beyond 5G? Well, let's introduce our panelists. Markus Mueck, Vice Chairman of the ETSI Board, joins us from Germany. Pearse O'Donoghue, Director Future Networks Directorate DG Connect with the European Commission, joins us from Brussels. Balazs Bertenyi, 3GPP TSG RAN Chairman, joins us from Hungary. Aguiar, Steering Board Chairman NETWORLD 2020, joins us from Portugal. Anita Döhler, CEO of NGMN, joins us from Germany. And Colin Wilcock, 5GIA Board Chairman, also joins us from Germany. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for taking part in our discussion today. I've got an opening question I'd like to ask each of you, and that is, what is the sense of urgency of research for 6G, and how can we learn from what was done with 5G and possibly do it better? Markus, perhaps I could start by asking you that.
Yeah, definitely, Guy. So I think what we are seeing in the research landscape is a plethora of research results that are becoming available and which will play an important role, undoubtedly will play an important role in beyond 5G and 6G system design. So what's really important for us is to build on the available momentum and take researchers by their hands, drive the corresponding technologies into standards, and make society take advantage of the corresponding benefits. That's actually the key point for us, and that's where ETSI has to play a key role.
Thank you, Markus. And Pearse, I'll ask you the same thing. Why the sense of urgency?
Well, just as we're moving into the stage of implementation of standalone 5G, there's no doubt that the acceleration of 6G research is very much in our sights. And our main competitors have all launched important 6G research and innovation initiatives. Korea is the last one to make an announcement, but also we have Japan, we've had China announcing an initiative last year. And of course, there are significant moves in the United States as well. So it's not too early at all. And it is urgent because this is part of the strategy which we see for Europe in terms of technology independence and also sovereignty. We want and we think that Europe can be in the lead on these connectivity technologies as 5G is implemented, as the race towards a whole new ecosystem of communications technologies and data services develops. We really see that it is essential that Europe be at the cutting edge. So while we still have to convince some people about 5G, the researchers who are listening to us now, the technologists who understand how long it takes to get this up and running will realize that 6G has to start now.
Thank you, Pearse. And Balazs, we've heard we need to start thinking about research for 6G now. Can we learn from what we've done with 5G and possibly even do things better?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we've seen with 5G is that the take-up in deployments have vastly accelerated what we have seen back in 4G. So just extrapolating that, what we could expect in the next 4, 6, 8 years, I think the demand towards 6G type research and 6G research making it into early standardization and eventually mainstream standardization is going to happen faster than it has happened with 5G. So I think one thing that we could learn from 5G is do not underestimate neither the speed nor the vastness of possibilities that are out there with the next generation research.
Thank you. And Rui, I'm going to ask you the same question. What is this sense of urgency we're seeing for 6G, and how can we learn from the process we've undertaken with 5G?
It's actually a very interesting question that I've been reflecting while I'm hearing the other questions. Well, there are two aspects that we need to be quite clear on. First, that we don't know what 6G is or will be at this moment. What we know is that the increase of traffic on networks always reach a point where it's worthwhile to do a disruptive investment in CapEx in order to be able to achieve and to follow up the increasing traffic as time goes by. Now, this is a trend we've verified across all these years, which led to this sort of 10-year time frame, because it has to do with the way the traffic increases, the requirements from society increases, and the cost of doing a major network upgrade. Now, as I've heard, yes, what we are realizing at this moment is that the systems get more and more complex. So the amount of reflection that we need on the technology and their evolution and their operation gets more and more hard to do. While at the same time, we are having an increasing, almost exponential pressure for new traffic, new applications, increasingly digitalized societies. So on one hand, we are having the pressure of everything is being faster. On the other hand, we are having the pressure of our systems are becoming more and more complex. So innovating on this and preparing for the next step in quality terms, not only on quantity, is something, and it's a task that is becoming more and more challenging. So yes, I would say that if we want to keep the kind of timings that we've seen in the past, we need to step up our game on 6G.
Thank you, Rui. And Anita, what's your view of this sense of urgency around research for 6G, and what can we learn from what we've been doing in the past 10 years with 5G research?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I can only echo what also Rui already said and my co-speakers. So we have this typical 8 to 10 year cycle, and this is why it's not too early to start to work on 6G and to perform research on 6G. What we can learn to do better from the past is, so we strongly believe, as you know, I'm representing here the global NGMN Alliance. We strongly believe that we really need to gather societal requirements. So we need to be better in getting the user requirements into all this new development of beyond 5G and 6G, however we call it. And so we will also learn from what is happening now with the 5G deployments. We will have this in parallel for some time. We will learn from the currently happening 5G standalone deployments. 5G can already cover a lot of use cases, so we need to really evaluate how can 6G add additional value to 5G. And I think that that's the main message. So for us, it's really important to include societal requirements, user requirements, and of course also operational requirements. Yeah.
Thank you, Anita. And finally, Colin, why the interest and sense of urgency in 6G research, and what can we do, if anything, better than we've done previously?
Well, I feel that the other panelists have already answered why, that we have this periodicity in cellular communication technologies, and now we're at the stage where if you look at new 6G systems being deployed in 2030 or 2030 plus, now is the time we need to start the research, not the standardization, but the research in those fundamental building blocks. In terms of what can we learn, from my point of view, if I look at what Europe has achieved in 5G with the existing research program, the 5G PPP, to my mind, the thing to learn from that is clear, that what we need is investment, public investment early and substantially to make sure that we have those resources to develop a lot of those key technologies in Europe. And I think if we look at the existing 5G PPP program, we can see that as a real success for Europe, where we've developed many of the key technologies that we currently think of as 5G. We have proved them with the key vertical domains, automotive, smart networks, Industry 4.0. We've had 800 contributions to standardization, thousands of contributions to scientific papers. We've actually created a lot of what we currently think of as 5G in that European partnership. And clearly what we would like to do is we would like to see the same with 6G. And we are already in discussions with the European Commission. There are already plans looking forward to 6G, the so-called Smart Networks and Services proposal. And that is what we need. We need this partnership between the public side, the industry, and the public side, the European Commission and the member states, the private side, which is the industry, and working together then be a force for creating 6G technology in Europe.
Thank you, Colin. And Pearse, keeping the focus on Europe for the moment, is it realistic that Europe can take the lead on 6G research and then standards? What is the unique value of Europe?
Well, I think it's that we bring together a number of different national research ecosystems and a lot of small companies, as well as a couple of very large ones who are working together. We should really take the lessons from the past, is that with what Colin has just referred to, which is the 5G PPP, we have a good model of how industry steps up to the plate and plays a key role in working together on research and innovation, but also, of course, then standardization as the technology develops. And that's something which realistically we can anticipate that Europe will again be able to play a key role. Now, we're not pretending that we're going to be leaders on our own. We're not pretending that this will be made in Europe on its own. But what we are definitely certain is that we cannot afford to allow others to develop and implement the technologies for us, and that Europe just becomes a consumer of the 6G ecosystem that will evolve. We have, as Colin has said, already planned at an advanced stage for a new partnership, a new form of partnership. Because as we've seen now, whether it's with COVID or over a longer term, the security issues arising from 5G, we have to consider the strategic and the security elements of these communications networks, just as we did with the 5G cyber toolbox. So for the next partnership, we will also be involving the member states. We'll be using a new entity called a joint undertaking. Now, it's critical to say that industry will still be in the lead, but as the member states will be responsible for the security elements of these networks, but also will actually have to provide earlier and more investment to roll out the networks and to provide the infrastructures for test beds and for testing the technologies. That's something where the member states have to be involved. But if we do all there come together, the Commission, the member states and industry, as well as academia and of course the standardization bodies, then yes, Europe can and realistically will play a key role.
Thank you, Pearse. Research leads in eventually into standards. Balazs, 3GPP is contribution driven. There's a huge amount of momentum behind 3GPP, but cellular standards is a very, very complex process and massive undertaking. What can be done to make it simpler for researchers to understand and engage with and get their research results into 3GPP?
That is an excellent question. Most of the contributions we see in 3GPP and standards over the last 2 decades really come from the industry. But then again, the industry by that time would have participated in all these research efforts that Colin was outlining, for example. So you typically get the research results channeled into standards through industry players. But then again, most of the major research organizations from all over the globe, they do directly participate in 3GPP meetings more and more because it helps them understand both the process as well as the needs from all the different segments. By now, 3GPP has really gathered key players from all the different industries that are planning to use 5G, take advantage of 5G technology, and having that direct connection within the 3GPP ecosystem between researchers and all these segments, of course, the cellular ecosystem is the bedrock of progress and making the right decisions going forward.
Thank you, Balazs. And Markus, would you like to come in on this question?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. We have seen in ETSI that researchers indeed are interested in bringing the technology to standards, because finally that is the key tool that allows technology to be brought to industry, to be introduced into future products, and then to be made available to the society as a whole, of course. But what we have also seen, as you mentioned, is that organizations that have not been active in this space might find it difficult to take the first steps and to really get involved. So from the ETSI side, we have addressed this problem. We have been creating a number of tools that are available freely on the ETSI web portal under the research folder. So I would like to invite everybody to have a look at that. And then furthermore, the ETSI Secretariat has set up a hotline and email address that can be used by everybody in order to have a first port of call, so to say. So it enables researchers to get direct contact to standards experts, to Secretariat experts who can provide support and guide researchers to take the first steps successfully.
Thank you, Markus. Anita, network operators, the core of your membership at NGMN, are busy deploying 5G networks across the globe commercially now. So is it too soon to start talking publicly about 5G? Are we going to risk losing customer trust?
Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion, of course, in the entire community. And I think there is a very clear answer on this, that as you already pointed out, the new generation or whatever is innovation always happens in parallel. So our users, so our end users, they expect, of course, means to differentiate and to innovate, but they also expect a reasonable, affordable cost basis and return of investments at the end. So, and economies of scale, which can be achieved through interoperability and standardization. It just takes time. So this is why I strongly believe it is correct to start the research on 6G now, so that we can really achieve the best outcome for our network users. And also to be very clear here, 5G is still absolutely in focus of the operator community, and there is absolutely no doubt that this will be one of the major focus themes also here in NGMN in our work program. And the first work on 6G starts in parallel. And also, I mean, what I would like to mention is that from industry representatives from our network users, I already received questions about 6G. So I think that our end users also expect us to work in parallel on innovation.
Thank you. And Colin, as Anita said, work is still continuing. There's a lot of work continuing on 5G. What about 5G PP? It's been very successful. How is 5G PP going to evolve as we move towards 6G? Is it something as simple as a name change, or is it get more profound than just this 5G, 6G?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the issue is that the 5G PPP is the program. I represent the association, the 5GIA, which is running that program together with the European Commission. The actual program has now had its final call. So the final set of projects has been approved and will start early next year. And some of those projects are indeed already looking at beyond 5G, setting the first ideas of what 6G will be. But as we move forward, as we consider 6G in detail, this will not be part of 5G PPP. This will be part of this Smart Networks and Services project. This is not project, partnership that we're talking about, program, a series of projects. And that needs to be something different to 5G PPP. It's not just 5G PP plus. And the reason is that the scope needs to be a lot wider. We're all aware that digital technology is coming together. And one of the things that will differentiate 6G is bringing in things like AI and cloud into the sort of telecoms area in a more integrated way. But we also need to consider other areas. So we also need to consider things like IoT, which tends to be considered a little bit separate today. And we need all of these communities to be involved. So what we need to do is we need to have much broader participation in these partnerships, which means we need a broader community involved. And that is the main change going forward, having not just the telecoms world, but having the other vertical domains, as in automotive, as in smart cities, as in Industry 4.0, but the other technological areas such as cloud and IoT also closely involved.
Thank you, Colin. Rui, let me come back to you. Several groups are working on research agendas for beyond 5G in Europe. How do you propose we bring all these activities together to increase their impact?
Okay, so once again, a very good question. It is, when we talk about pure research, frankly, as an academic, I've already seen lots of papers claiming that they were working in 6G. Nobody knows exactly what that means, but at least it shows that there is a community that's already interested in looking to the future of networks. Now, research is done by cooperation, by talking, and I would say we almost explore the best ideas from each other in order to bring something else. And this happens inside, the academic groups, the industrial groups, inside a country, inside a continent, across continents, across associations. So in one hand, we do really need to have a huge community, and taking the words of Colin, a community that increasingly requires a different set of competences, which brings added type of challenges, how to make these communities talk to each other. Now, what we do aim to do is to actually address these multiple groups and engage them with sort of common views. We do have a huge document which is called Strategic Research Innovation Agenda, where we identify key topics that need to be addressed for the future of beyond 5G and for 6G networks. Now, we do expect that people, with a couple of events that we will also organize, will sort of gravitate and organize themselves on this common ambition of building the future. And in fact, I think that it's not a matter of following the others. I mean, there is no problem if we cooperate with North America, Korea, Japan, China, Brazil, whoever. It's not really an issue, because I think that in Europe we do have critical mass with a critical advantage. We strongly believe that 6G will be, grounded on societal needs. And I think we can proudly say that in Europe, human values, the citizen itself and the society power is the strongest in the world. So trying to design a network that will cater to these kind of requirements, it will need the contributions of all these persons, but in Europe, I think we are in a huge advantage against everybody else.
Thank you for that, Rui. Markus, ETSI is clearly ready when it comes to welcoming research, but what more needs to be done to promote that platform? Is it a simple case of build it and they will come?
Well, it's definitely not the case that people from other communities are simply coming to us. I mean, it is very clear that we need to promote this platform, as you say. I mean, what we are doing, for example, is, as Rui explained, we are taking advantage of activities in the research community. Rui was, for example, speaking about the strategic research and innovation agenda of the NETWORLD 2020 European technology platform. So what we did from the ETSI side is to reach out to NETWORLD 2020, take the findings of this SRIA, in particular the identification of about 100 technology directions which are expected to become relevant over the next few years. And we have been mapping those onto the various technical bodies in ETSI. So here we have created a tool that is able to direct researchers immediately to the right target organization within ETSI. And this is just one example. So indeed, we are reaching out to research organizations. We are collaborating, and we are trying to guide our friends from the innovation and research community towards ETSI. But of course, this is also a call for letting us know what else we can do, right? I mean, we had a lucky situation that Rui kindly helped us getting access to his community, but possibly there are communities we are not aware of. There are communities that are doing relevant work that may be able to benefit ETSI, that may be able to be driven into industry and products. So please let us know, talk to us. And again, please let me refer to the ETSI portal and the research information database that is available there. Talk to us, let us know, and we would be happy to get in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Markus. Well, a final question for now to all of you. The scene is set, the players have announced their plans, everything's in place, but what more can be done to reduce overlap, to converge efforts and accelerate research into standards and the market? Balazs, would you like to start things off?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? I think it also comes down to where would you actually draw the line? I mean, the way I would see it is the continued innovation is, of course, crucial. Whether some of it will still be 5G or some of it we will eventually call 6G, I think that decision will fall somewhere years from now. I mean, I'm a pragmatist, so where I draw the line between generations is the backwards compatibility of the radio technology. So whenever the requirements that are fulfilled with the radio technology that is not anymore backwards compatible with the previous generation, that's when we have a new G. But the line is not black and white. Even now between 4G and 5G, several new functionalities were actually placed into both of these generations. So how and when we would actually get to 6G per se, I'm not sure that is actually the critical question. For me, the critical question is how we keep up the speed of innovation and successfully bring it into standards. And I think for that, the multilateral global cooperation going forward is absolutely key.
Great. And Anita, as Balazs said, how do we ensure this pace of research continues? How do we accelerate that even? Any ideas of what we can do to prevent duplication of work?
Yeah, first of all, I think we need to have a very open-minded exchange, and we need to also be flexible with regards to our own working modes, and probably also adopt the global standard setting to emerging industry needs, including topics like open source. So in NGMN, as you know, so we are an operator-driven organization, but we also have in our partnership in NGMN research organizations, and we do this by purpose and to facilitate this exchange. For Europe, I believe what is one of the differences we have in Europe, we have, compared to other regions of the world, quite a high number of operators. And we have a great possibility to combine the research also with a very high user centricity, because we should have enough user insights and a good field for differentiation and innovation.
Thank you. And Colin, how can we converge our efforts? How can we accelerate the research process?
Well, clearly, from my point of view, the first step is certainly trying to get this European partnership off the ground, Hopefully this will start halfway through next year. And the point is we need some central point for discussion, for trying to come to some sort of consensus. There are clearly many, many activities spread across the globe, as we have heard, but we need somewhere where many of the key players can come together in a fairly neutral environment and actually come to some consensus about what are going to be the major functionalities and building blocks. And due to the open nature of Europe, I believe that Europe is the perfect place for that to happen, and I hope the smart networks and services will provide the platform to enable that key players can come together and decide what 6G will be.
Thank you. And Rui, what more can we do to coordinate our work and accelerate research to get it into the standards process and then get it to market?
Well, I'll probably be slightly off key here, because I think that depends on what stage of our work that we are talking. Now, I think it was clear on previous discussions that we are, I would say, on the very early work for 6G. And here, I would say that I don't expect any consensus. What I would expect would be a huge amount of investment in a huge amount of different ideas, and some of them will be successful, and some of them will no. And so there is a stage that I think that's where we are, where hearing and engaging in discussions of very different views will be essential. Now, after that, we can move into a more research moving really to standardization phase. And then we start to have the need for consensus. Then we need to start to have a global trend in Europe and hopefully also across other continents, by the reasons that Colin mentioned, where we can start aligning the technologies, the people that are really going to put the nuts and bolts on the standards to converge along very similar lines. On an early stage, I think that what we need is a huge amount of conversation, not focusing on the alignment, but focusing on being creative, bringing new ideas, bringing new requirements, trying to get such a complete view of what could be our future challenges as possible. If we do that phase properly, then I think it will be much easier for people to align. And we can really move then fast into standardization.
Thank you. And Markus, any further thoughts about what we can do to converge our efforts and to avoid duplication of work?
Yeah, definitely. And please let me follow up on the statements by Rui. Actually, a very good question is, at which point in time should we engage with the standards community and work towards some consensus finding in the industry? Actually, I think there is the general belief that we should probably only go to standards when a technology is stable, and the so-called final stage or stage rework of the technology can be defined in a standard setting organization. I would caution and say that at this stage, work in standards is probably already going on, and you will probably see that as a researcher, you're coming too late into the standards community. Let me give an example, a specific example. One of the technologies that is certainly going to be relevant for beyond 5G and 6G systems is, for example, terahertz technology, right? So should we wait until research is stable and can propose a specific terahertz implementation to standard setting organization? I don't believe that this is required. I mean, we can start at an earlier stage. For example, it is definitely valuable to get researchers together and think, for example, in an early stage, for example, about propagation models is a great start, right? Discuss the physical properties, have some consensus on the technological basis that should be used to develop this technology. So there are different stages, and I would really encourage the research community to get in touch with standard setting organizations such as ETSI in an early stage, in order not to miss the train and to be as impactful as you can be.
Thank you. And Pearse, final thoughts and comments from yourself about how we can accelerate research into standards and then into the market?
Yes, well, starting from now, I think in your original question, you used the word overlap. There will be some sort of seamless transition from 5G into 6G, which is natural. And we've just seen the way that the 3GPP has worked in the past when we have different evolutions and different releases. But so that we don't keep doing the same thing, so that we do accelerate, and particularly that Europe accelerates, we have to have a vision. And that ties in with what Rui was saying about us being at a very early stage of 6G. Because if we just think back, 5G started from a vision. We all remember the ITU vision document, the move from IMT 2020 to M 2030. Several industrial groups, including the industry in the 5G IA, the 5G PPP, NGMN, etc., produced their own vision documents, and they were very useful to drive forward future standards. So for 6G, we still have to develop that collective vision, and we have to do it quickly. It's happened in a few member states. Our colleagues in Finland, for example, have already been working on a 6G flagship. But the element that I want to introduce, might surprise some experts in standardization, is that vision has to be, first of all, a high-level vision. And what is it that makes Europe different? And it goes back to what Anita said at the start, some of the other elements that we have to bring in. Social values, for example, but in very concrete ways. We have data protection, and that means data protection by design. We have security by design. And a third element, which nobody's mentioned so far, but which will be crucial to 6G, both as a technology, as it operates, but also what it does, that is climate neutrality, low power technology, and helping us to meet our very ambitious climate goals. It's something which no technology can fail to take account of, and we hope that 6G will be very helpful in that regard. But those are critical issues where I would dare say that Europe will be in the lead. In some cases, people will say, those guys, once again, they're imposing extra cost on themselves so they won't actually succeed in the race. Well, Europe has shown that we are prepared to pay that extra cost in order to get those protections, in order to get that value out of the technology. And in the long run, it's showing to be a winning strategy. So the industrial actors who are engaging now in the SNS partnership, they've already developed a roadmap. We've heard about it. And when we start those 6G projects, we will hope to be at a stage where we are actually clear on what is our vision, and then what is the technology, what are the technology challenges. We're already working on very early drafts based on the research agenda developed by industry that's been referred to. What might be in early work programs, but it's the industry association and it is the joint undertaking that will actually decide those work programs. But whether it's on terahertz communications, whether there are other elements to do with security, particularly with regard to network security and edge computing security, all of those things will come out soon. But we will quickly see what it is in terms of technology that differentiates 5G from 6G and what it is that we need to do to accelerate to get to the point where we want to be in a few years' time.
Well, thank you very much, Pearse. And indeed, thank you, everyone. We're going to stop our discussion here, but not for long, as we'll be returning shortly to answer live questions from our audience. And based on this last session alone, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions. This is your opportunity to question our speakers. If you haven't already done so, then please use the form on the website to submit your questions now. We'll get through as many of them as we can. So please stay with us, and we'll be back with a live Q&A session in just a moment. Goodbye for now.